I can hear myself.
Okay. I know it's good. We got to hear.
So in any case, I grew up loving comic books and always dreamt of doing comic books for a living because I was always the weird kid in class and crew. I was always that kid, always scribbling away. And I was up for a couple of different scholarships. When I graduated high school, I didn't get any of them. And some friends of mine had, gone to college, and I was determined to get myself into comic books, one way or another, during that same 4-year period that they were going to school. And by the time they were graduating, I put out my first comic book, which was Cry for God #1, and that was a labor of love. And it took me a full year to draw that entire comic book. But I met some other guys who had self-published a comic book, and at the time, this was in, like 1987, 88, you could print up 5,000 copies of a comic book for $1,500 with a black and white and red cover. And I was working in an auto parts warehouse at the time, making $150 a week, but I still thought, okay, I could save about $1,500, and I could afford that printing bill. So I got together with a couple of friends and worked on the first issue of Cry for Dawn, and it came out in December 1989, and I haven't looked back since. And I remember showing my work to different editors of Marvel and DC, and they would nitpick, to me, the most ridiculous details. Like, I remember this one guy complaining about the way I drew a tire in the background of a panel, and I'm like, who cares about that? If a tire in a car in the background that the Hulk stomps on, who cares if the tire isn't drawn 100% correct? So, yeah, I didn't agree with their assessment of my abilities, but I knew I had something to give. So, went into self-publishing, and that, took root in the market, and I started getting a fan base, and eventually I did work for both Marvel and DC, and at this point I've worked for, I think I've worked for every publisher out there. I've done covers for pretty much everybody out there. And yeah, it's something I love. I'm not going to stop until I drop dead. So,
that's interesting. So you were like, I'm not doing this Marvel stuff. Let's just draw this and stay at it. And just...
Well, ever since I was a little kid, I had my own ideas for my own characters, and seeing guys go off and do their own things. Like there are a lot of people the first people who became millionaires in comic books, they technically weren't good enough to get jobs at Marvel or DC. Like the guys who created the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, they wanted to draw, Spider-Man and Daredevil, but they weren't good enough. So they went and did this weird thing with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they became millionaires. So like there's no one correct way. A lot of guys who have become very successful in comic books, like Jordan Vasquez, the guy who does Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. He probably could not have gotten a job doing the X-Men, but he's become an international star doing his own thing. So I've actually found that always very inspiring.
I got mentioned to, I was mentioning to Joe earlier, I also aspire to be a comic writer, illustrator, etc. And the change, or the turn for me was in the 90s, seeing, so there were other independent published companies like Dark Horse, etc. But an image agency for me, that was when I learned that, you can write an original story of your own ideas. So that was it for me. So and I'm a fan of his, actually, of many of his works, in my own personal collection. So it's just great hearing a little bit more about your personal journey. It's 35 years and it's still in the game. So, a question, did you have any favorite comic books that kind of, it was a response to that made you drive you first to be into comic books? Or like, what was the driving force behind being comics for you?
Well, my favorite comic character is Batman. And so when I was 4 years old, I watched Adam West on TV every day as Batman, and that's still my favorite version of Batman. Batman is a character I still draw for fun, and I've drawn a couple of Batman covers, But I still have not drawn a full Batman comic book. That's on my list. Before I die, I have to draw a Batman comic book. But in the 80s, there was a comic book company called Pacific Comics, which was kind of like a predecessor to Image, in that all their comic books were creator-owned. Everybody got to own their own characters. And they published Groove by Sergio Aragonés, right, which has been published by just about every company out there by now. And they also published The Rocketeer by Dave Stevens.
So, The Rocketeer.
The Rocketeer. Started with Pacific Comics in the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, and The Rocketeer eventually got published by Dark Horse, and I think maybe even DC did in addition to something. But yeah, Dave Stevens, he owned and wrote and drew The Rocketeer. And when I was a young teenager, that was very inspiring to me. You know, the fact that he just had his own vision, his own thing that he wanted to do. And I had all my own ideas. And, you know, yes, I wanted to draw like Wolverine and Batman and Conan. But yeah, my own, like Dawn is my own character. And she'll always be more special to me because, you know, she's a part of me. She came from my own brain.
That is, so was it The Rocketeer in that book that inspired you?
One of many things that inspired me.
Yeah. So the Rocketeer for you was Spawn.
Yeah, you can say that. You can say that.
Okay. What about we jump back into the creation of comic books? I don't know if we want to.
She should be here literally any minute, but we can keep going with this.
Okay. So what I was going to ask was the creation of comics, to get in a little bit to your process. Like, does it start as an idea? Are you guys writers first, or image first, drawing images first?
Well, for me, I'm definitely an artist first. I think in pictures, and like say with Dawn, the first issue of Cry for Dawn, all of Cry for Dawn actually was an anthology, which was all these different short horror stories, and then Dawn only appeared on the covers. And she was basically the sex appeal to try to, you know, get sales, you know? Because we all know you're not supposed to judge your book by its cover, but everybody does. You know, if you see a cover you like, you're going to buy it, right? So on Cry for Dawn, we had Dawn on the covers, and I had a lot of freedom on the covers to do whatever I want situationally, and it just had to feature Dawn in some facet. So, like doing 9 issues of Cry for Dawn with Dawn on the covers and being able to do whatever I want, a storyline started coming together. And that led to the first Dawn graphic novel called Lucifer's Halo, which was a 6-issue miniseries. And to this day, that's my process. I think in pictures, it's almost like, imagine if you saw a trailer for a movie where you just got these flashes of different scenes, and then you have to try to make up the movie based on the trailer. You know, because I just have these little flashes of imagery, and then I'm like, okay, how do I knit that together into a story?
Right. So, start images first, draw it. The next question is, beginning of story, end of story, middle of story, and how does page count come into that? Like the structure of the book, you think in terms of an issue, like you come in here and say, I'm going to make a 5-issue series or a maxi series of 12 issues. When does that type of thing come into play?
My brain is very structured, so I always think of, like say the format, whether it's going to be an 8-page story or like a 32-page story or a 5-issue or 6-issue story. And before I start, I like to know where the ending is mostly going to be. And like a lot of my favorite books, like say the Harry Potter books, the author J.K. Rowling, she knew the ending before he even started. And I think that's the best way to do a story because, you know, all the plot line, if you know where the ending is, everything will lead to that point. And it'll make sense, and it'll be a very satisfying ending. Frank Herbert, when he wrote the novel Dune, which had just made into another movie, the first thing he typed up was the last chapter. He said, this is where the story is going, and everything perfectly leads to that point. So I have a tough time starting a story if I don't know the ending. The ending might change by the time I get there. Because stories come alive if you're like really in it when you're working on it. You know, it's like when actors talk about improvising lines of dialogue when they're filming a scene. When you're doing it, it comes alive in a different way. You know, and same thing with comic books. When you're drawing it, sometimes different possibilities will pop up. So I like to leave things open a little bit to improvise and either change things or head in a different direction. But like 90 to 95%, I like to know, you know, where everything is leading.
Was Dom the first character, or were there other characters that were known for Dom?
I have a mountain of characters that I came up with in high school, which thank God they never saw print. A lot of them are very juvenile, but I mean that, you know, that happens to the best of us. The better ideas that I came up with early had filtered down into the drawing stuff, and I actually have a firm belief that if an idea or a concept is good, it'll keep popping up. You know, I keep sketchbooks of like random ideas I have, but if something is worthwhile, it'll you know, make itself known.
I do want to ask about some of the sound collaboration between creative partners. You know, obviously you started independent yourself.
Yeah.
With friends. How that transition from there to action.
That could be my wife.
So,
Hey, who's that sexy girl over there? Hey, you in the leather jacket. Hey, you. Well, my better half is here. Hello, Christina.
Christina.
Hi, gorgeous. Okay. Hey, everybody, warm welcome to my beautiful wife, Christina Linsner.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, honey. Yeah, we actually had a very horrible travel day yesterday, so it's kind of rough over here.
It was horrible, but it was actually kind of fun.
You know, missed one flight, ended up at the airport for forever, but we're here now.
You're here now. Glad to see you. You do.
Okay.
Coming over to pass this mic off to one of you, and I'm going to step aside and let you show there. Jump in.
All right. I'm not happy. So, yeah, I was just giving some background on how I got into comic books. What is your background in comic books, dude?
My background in comic books.
Oh, we have to hold my microphone first.
My background in comic books starts really. I had a love for comic books, which little girls in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s were not supposed to love comic books, unless they were like Steranko romance novels.
So, someone today actually told me that they were forbidden from reading Vampirella when they were a kid because their parents were very religious.
Sure.
And were you allowed to read Vampirella?
Anything. Well,
That's why you had to with me.
In fact, the first time I saw Vampirella, everybody wears the 6-foot giant door poster. My uncle happened to have this, and I didn't know who Vampirella was. This was like 71, 75. And I saw her, and I was like, "Who is she? What's her story?" So, and all these years later, I get to write her, and I did a couple covers too.
So, how did that feel, finally getting to write Vampirella?
It felt fulfilling. It felt really fulfilling. And what I wanted to do with the character, I mean, Corey J. Ackerman made her very tongue-in-cheek, and, you know, there's so many silly adventures that she had, but I kind of wanted to not make her serious. She had an air of humor about her, but I wanted to explore her friendship with other women. And we paired her up with Evelyn the Witch. And I don't think there's too many Vampirella stories that have that going on. So I wanted to do that. And also, I was homesick from Philadelphia, which is my hometown. And there's a lot of the locations in there are Philadelphia locations that any local would know and love. And so I kind of made it like my little love letter to Philadelphia as well.
And that was the miniseries Roses for the Dead.
Roses for the Dead, yeah, for Dynamite.
Written by you and drawn by me.
And I did one of the variant covers.
Yes.
And
so what was that like working with your husband?
We work very well together.
You can tell everybody how hard it is.
We work very well together. We really, really do. Joe has, and I mean, I don't think that you came up with this, but your way of organizing panels and creating a flowchart for a story really, really works. Why don't you explain that?
Oh, well, I was saying earlier that I'm very methodical, very organized.
You're very detail-oriented.
Yeah, with the way I organize the story. And when I write out a story, I always have a flow chart. If there are going to be, like, say, 29 important events, I'll make a list of, like, those 29 important events, and I'll figure out how many pages I have. And if I only have 20 pages, then I have to squeeze things a little bit to, like, make sure.
I wish we had a PowerPoint presentation. I mean, we could have.
But yeah, it all works out here.
I actually like the way that worked. And also, as I was writing this, Joe would give me feedback. We kind of bounce ideas off one another. And because of that, we came up with some completely new things that I would not have necessarily thought to put in on my own had I not had a little bit of a nudge from you. But you did ask me, what is my story in comic books?
What is your story?
My story in comic books is, like I said, very, very young girl, loved comic books.
Now, how many other girls read comic books?
My neighborhood?
Yeah, in your neighborhood.
You looking at me. That's it. I mean,
So how come? What bug did you about the what appealed about comic books?
Well, the dynamic panel. I mean, of course. I mean, that was just something that I was drawn to, and a lot of it was, kind of cheesecake pinup, which my father collected Vargas and cigarette cards and stuff like that when I was a kid. So I've never been upset about the female form.
Good thing.
Yeah, good thing. But yeah, my story in comics is, so as I grew up, I wanted to work in comics. I desperately wanted to work in comics. And I had decided that, so what if I was a girl? I was going to work in comics. This was the late 80s, early 90s. And that did not go over well at all. I mean, there were some great writers out there like Nancy Collins. And I mean, of course, like, Trina Robbins designed Vampirella's costume. And, but how many people know that? People go, oh, Frank Frazetta designed it. It's like, no, Montezoni didn't. But, again...
so you almost went to the Cooper School?
I almost went to the Cooper School. That is a long story within itself. I had a hard... What?
It's always a long story.
Yeah, it's like... I kind of wish that Joe Kubert was still alive to hear all these I almost went to stories. Long story short, I had a horrible guidance counselor. It was the 80s, and I don't know if she was in need of Prozac or whatever, but my name is Christina with a K, and she would always call me Chris. And so when I went to tour the Kubert Institute, she filled my name out as Chris. And I was the only girl on the tour. And I was having a great time. Everybody was welcoming. They were very wonderful. And then we got to the point where they were talking about housing. At that time, there was no co-ed housing at the Kubert Institute. It was all guys. And the guy who was running the tour, he said, can I talk to you? And I said, yeah, sure. What is it? I said, do they have female housing here? He's like, no, not yet. We'd like to have that, but, and I was like, he told me there was off-campus housing that was available, like, rental apartments and stuff. And if you've ever been to Dover, it's all cobblestones. And there's some nice areas, but there's some, like, you turn a corner, there's pockets of crime. You do not want to live there as a girl. I don't know if it's still like that, but in the 80s it was like that. So he very nervously and apologetically told me, we thought you were a boy, because my guidance counselor wrote, Chris. But however, everyone who I've told that story to, who is a graduate of the Kubert Institute, including Amanda Connor, Christopher Knowles, a bunch of people have said, it's really a shame that I didn't tell Joe Kubert that story, because they said Joe Kubert would have found you a place. Yeah. And so then I gave up comics, and I always painted. So I moved out to California and became a gallery artist. I became a lowbrow gallery artist. And I've come to realize that those gallery shows are not that much different than comic conventions. It's a group of artists, it's a group of writers. This is just a bigger room. That's all it really is. But
And they have more wine and cheese there.
yeah.
So yeah, we've done a couple of comic books together, and it's both wonderful and sometimes frustrating.
It's
Because
frustrating working with me.
only because if I'm working with someone that I don't get along with, I can slam the phone down.
Where is this going?
Well, I have to get along with you because I live here. So, yeah, that if we ever have a disagreement, that it has to get ironed out before dinner.
I think we're having one right now. No, I've actually never felt that way working with you.
Oh, well, it's only happened once or twice.
What was the catalyst?
You usually criticize my anatomy about something, right?
Okay. Joe is a guy who will study anatomy till his last dying breath. He's always trying to get it right. And
Trying.
yeah, but you're up here, and you want to be in the stratosphere. You want to be beyond that, which is great. I remember when we first met in January 1990. I thought Dawn was a little long in the torso, and her knees were a little funky. So you do sometimes have little areas where I'll say, hey, if she was going to put her hand like this, it wouldn't be like, So if that's what you're talking about, I thought that was helpful.
Yes. I'm teasing.
Okay.
I've actually come to rely upon your...
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. But, does anybody have any questions out there?
Oh, just going to grab one of the mics.
Oh.
Questions out here?
Awesome.
Perfect timing. Yeah, are there any questions out here? I'll hit back with the mic.
I was just wondering, do you get a lot of pull from the comic world to do art outside the comic world, and writing outside the comic world?
I'll be honest with you. Normally, if there's any writing that I'm going to do outside the comic world at all, it's in the horror genre, and it's with my friends Anya Martin and Nancy Collins, and we call ourselves the Weird Sisters. I would think that area, and I also have a guitar player that I've written with for many, many years, so we sometimes write prose that turns into songs and things like that.
You have any other?
I was going to say, me, I've done lots of advertising work outside of comic books. Yeah, I used to do storyboards for, if you remember the Swatch watches in the 80s and 90s? I did storyboards for them. I've done storyboards for like Nestle, for UPS.
Ziploc thing, the little green.
Yeah, do you remember Figure Man commercials for Ziploc? I actually worked on some of those commercials. So, yeah, there was one series of commercials where Finger Man made a character called Green Thumb, and I actually got hired to paint the thumb green and draw a little face on there, which is surreal. But yeah, I've done a fair amount of work outside of comic books. So,
Yeah, you guys have any more questions out here? Oh, right over here.
Is there a project that's kind of something you haven't done yet or are hoping to do eventually?
oh yeah, I've got 100 projects like that.
Now, are you asking separately or together? Or both? Individually or as a team?
Well, first off, my next big project is going to be the next Dawn miniseries, which I've been letting percolate for a couple of years, and I really hope to get that out starting next year. And then I have a character called Sinful Susie. I also have a miniseries I'm going to do with her. One of these days, I'm going to do an adaptation of William Shakespeare's Macbeth. That's been a dream project of mine. And yeah, I still have. I mean, I could probably talk for hours about the dream projects I have, but don't want to get too far ahead of myself. It's like my next couple of years, I want to methodically plan out, like get Dawn done, get Sinful Susie done, and then hopefully Macbeth. But you have a Vampirella series you want to do.
Yes. How much should I talk about that?
What artist do you have in mind?
The Fallcon brothers. If anybody's familiar with them, and if you're not, you need to get familiar with them. They're wonderful. They're two brothers that are like 2 years apart, but they share the same brain, and they work on comics so quickly and in this really dark, eclectic, masterful style. What is that? Captain Freebird. Captain Freebird by the Fallcon brothers. And the Clone. They did work for the Clone Wars. That was too Dark Horse, right? But no, pick up Captain Freebird. I'm serious. Read that, and then just think about Vampirella in that world drawn by them, and a little bit of spaghetti western too.
I love that. Westerns.
Yeah.
Vampirella?
Vampirella has not been in Western.
Right.
So, oh wow, and if now that I'm saying this, if someone goes out there and writes it really quick, they stole from me.
Oh, very first, very big. Yeah, those, I'm looking forward to both of those things.
That's going to be percolating for quite a while because Dynamite has such a tight schedule for Vampirella. Like I think it's already out there, like spring to 2025. They're already booked up till with stories, so it's going to be a while, but that just gives me more time to really work on it and hone it.
So Vampirella, one thing about Vampirella, it's a character I always knew, I recognize the character.
Sure.
But I never really read it.
You're not alone. You're not alone. That's a lot of people.
And I started reading it.
Yeah.
And so.
Did you start with the Warren era? Did you start with the Harris era? So Dynamite era.
Dynamite, yes.
Okay.
So is Vampirella actually a scientist?
Is she a scientist?
So the title I was reading, it was like this whole story about why they left their planet.
Why they left Dracula.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I've heard about that. I've not read that one. I'll be honest with you, I'm a fan of the Warren era, which is the 60s, 70s stuff. The Harris era, it's like Vampirella and Dental Floss, like the look isn't even attractive to me. And a couple of the stories were good, some of the anti-comic stories. But for the most part, I'm really glad that Dynamite picked up Vampirella. Nick, who's the president of Dynamite, who I worked for many years when I was trying to get into comics. I was his executive assistant. Nick handles Vampirella like she's his baby. He really does. So, which is not to say you won't pour his baby out and do a bunch of variant covers that you have to buy, but yeah, I'm happy that you started from Dynamite Era. That's a cool era to start from.
So I do have another question, but before I ask this question, is there anyone out there that's got something brewing they'd like to ask? Oh, got two. Thank you.
I want to know what this lady with the Marauder shirt has to say.
Hi. Yeah, I hear a lot of what you said. I also was a Adam West Batman fan when I was little, and that and then when they showed the reruns for a long time, and when they stopped doing that, then I started remembering that they had these things at the end of the credits that said these characters appear in comic books.
So that's how you found out
So
about
then
it.
I was, about junior high age, I started buying comic books because I wasn't getting as much TV access as I had been.
Right,
And,
which is actually not a bad thing.
And
It's better that you went to books.
Definitely, yeah. Now I started lots of back issues and all sorts of things, and I eventually became a librarian, so I
Oh, fantastic!
research and back issues.
So you live books.
Yeah, and then in 1985 I met this guy, and he apparently was just about to head out to the Kubert School, but he didn't tell me. Well, he had a friend who had gone there and missed his wife so much and everything because his wife wasn't there, and he was just out there by himself, and he's like, well, that was kind of tough, and I'm kind of falling in love with this girl, and so I'm just not going to tell her that I'm about to go to the Kubert School, and I'll change my plans and stay here.
Were you in Minnesota and he was in New Jersey? Was that it?
No, we were both in the Green Bay area.
Oh,
but that was his plan, was to go to Kubert School. And anyway, we met, we collaborated with his brother on a sketchbook of a friend that we had to do special effects and stuff. Anyway, long story short, but anyway, so that's how he almost went to the Kubert School and didn't, because he never told me he was about to go. I would have told him to go, but he never told me. But
that's really sweet, actually. That's really sweet. That's so much sweeter than my story. My story really sucked.
Yeah. So, anyway, I was just wondering, because when we collaborate on things, we never did anything professionally other than that, but when we collaborate on things, sometimes he'll tell me an idea that he has.
Right.
That's, I'm like totally into it. We're just like diving.
You have to
like
be each other's cheerleaders. You have to be each other's cheerleaders, or it doesn't work.
But then sometimes there'll be a story that he'll tell me an idea, and I'm like, that sounds like a cool story, but I just can't dig into it and be part
I
of
do the
that
same
one.
thing with Joe. I do the same thing with Joe. And Joe at least 10 times a day will say, oh, well, when I'm bored, I'm going to write this story, I'm going to do it. And I was like, please don't do that.
Things that you don't quite measure.
Yeah. That's great that you guys have a working relationship together. And I think your Kubert story is really sweet and cute. I do.
Hey, if I can jump in, because we're pretty much getting to
Go
the
ahead,
time
John.
here. Can you share anything about the direction for the
Let's see, the next Dawn miniseries. Let's see, the last series left off with the main character, Daria Shaka, leaving Europe. Because at the end of the first series,
It's literally on the top.
at the end of the first series, he left New York. There was a miniseries where he had crazy adventures in Europe. And now, in the next 20, he's going to be returning to New York after, I think, 20 years will have gone by in the storyline. And it's going to be heavily mythological. It's going to be heavily New York-centric. I've been amassing tons of reference. There are big scenes that take place in Rockefeller Plaza where the big ice skating rink is.
Oh, that is such a big.
And it's going to be epic. It's going to be fantastic. And part of the reason I haven't gotten it done yet is because I want to do it right. And it's probably going to kick my butt, but it's just one of those things. I got to get done. You got to get it done right.
I get it. You want to get it right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Christina. And
Sorry, I'm late.
no, you're fine.
I had an Uber driver not show up.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's ever had that. I was like, I got stood up by an Uber driver. I was like,
We're glad you made it. We're glad you're here.
Yeah.
So, But anyway, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming out.